Why do people drink alcohol? This is a question that never ceases to generate a smile because the answer is both simple and obvious. Alcohol is superficially enjoyable. Perhaps those who ask it are secretly searching for answers to more pressing concerns. For example, why do people drink excessively? Why do people continue to drink when they know it's causing them harm? And why do people lie about how much they drink? Why do people refuse to not drink? It's my gut feeling that these more complex questions are what lie at the heart of the matter, the labyrinth of dynamics that weave timeless intrigue into the human obsession with ethanol. Not convinced? Then let me endeavour to shed some light on this fascinating subject. Certainly no one can deny the fact that alcohol stimulates social interaction, from celebration through to commiseration. I fully accept walking into any pub, club, restaurant or party, or endless other venues, one sees the enjoyment of a lifestyle accompaniment present for millennia. Indeed, there are some who go as far as saying that its effect is so elusive, it's the elixir of life, guaranteeing temporary release and ease from all we choose to forget. No doubt that it is this pleasure and comfort that firmly establishes itself in the lives of billions of people. I'm sure many would be quick to point out other positives, including job provision, industry profits and tax revenue. That it is no ordinary drug is apparent from my own extensive use. It instantly and enjoyably transformed my world, and no one had to force my arm. It would be grossly unfair, therefore, not to acknowledge good times it facilitated, not least in romantic endeavours. I loved its initial buzz, euphoric vibe, and how it intensified my sense of well-being. It was integral to my upbringing, part of who I was, instilling pride in my drinking prowess. Like most, I was sold on the abundance culture, happily imbibing with apparent impunity. In later years, it facilitated my escape from the pressure and stress of work and life, and eventually it came to my rescue, temporarily anesthetizing remorse, guilt and fear. Who, for a moment, would think it problematic, beyond the selfish few who irresponsibly get drunk and spoil it for the rest? Is there any wonder, then, why alcohol isn't perceived as anything other than a generally agreeable commodity? That alcohol has a universal appeal isn't in dispute, but it is at this point when rosy images, biased notions and partial truths need to give way to the exposure and clarification of reality. The fact is, if alcohol isn't given due respect, it will deliver wounds, ranging from amusing puppy knowing to that of man-eating crocodiles, tearing one to shreds. I jest not. I don't expect you to settle exclusively for my word, so consider, if you will, some of the more high-profile celebrities openly vocal about having had problems with alcohol. Sir Elton John, Eric Clapton, Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Adams, Naomi Campbell, Amy Winehouse, Richard Burton, Anthony Hopkins, Ben Affleck, Paul Gascoigne, Ronnie O'Sullivan and Ant McPartlin. Others include Robbie Williams, Britney Spears, Fergal O'Brien, Joel Madden, Princess Margaret, Churchill and former President Bush, etc., etc. These are just a few famous personalities easily found on Google, dispelling the myth that consumption of alcohol is as harmless as we would like to think. What I now know is that, far from being in a small minority, as producers would have us believe, my drinking was comparable to the 1 in 4 of adults who do so to harmful levels. By the way, harmful drinking is defined by the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, abbreviated to NICE. And it means a pattern of consumption that causes health problems, including psychological, such as depression, alcohol-related accidents, or physical illness, such as acute pancreatitis. So it's nothing to worry about then. Were this not enough, at some point, without my knowledge or permission, it enslaved thoughts and actions by a process of addiction, guaranteeing systematic demise and removal of everything that I considered of value. I ended up hollow, empty, alone and lonely, unable to function, firmly on the road to hell. Unlike alcohol, these circumstances were difficult to swallow, but true nevertheless. Yet I consider myself fortunate, having escaped a rock bottom of 6 feet under. No different to anyone else, I was unaware of the extent, severity, and likelihood of encountering alcohol-related harm in all its facets, least of all addiction. Like the rest of us, I just wasn't informed. So surely the searching and more important question should be, what is it that drives us to carry on drinking in spite of devastating risks to our health, relationships, financial and social standing? From my first-hand experience, I attribute it to several factors. Firstly, from early childhood, we are all subliminally and overtly conditioned into believing that alcohol is a natural and normal part of everyday life. In fact, I would go further than that by saying that we run the risk of being ostracized by our peers if we contradict global customs. Proliferation of product ranges and diversity of types of drink in well-established arenas from the traditional pub, licensed restaurant, bar, domestic cabinet, etc., are deeply ingrained. Human beings are also very suggestible and indeed programmable to conform to specific conventions. For example, there was always an irrefutable association between being inside a pub and having alcohol, although there's no reason why that should have applied. Similarly, holidays were always linked to heavy drinking. Again, there's no justification why that should be the case other than conditioning. It takes a brave soul to deny such controlling pressures. Advertising, marketing, and social expectations make abstaining even more of a no-go area, casting the prospect of being labelled unmutual for any of us who dares. It is important, I think, not to underestimate the overwhelming societal pressures to conform, of expectations to consume alcohol, reinforced by the notion that, well, why wouldn't we when it's so enjoyable? Another hugely significant variation of this human condition concerns pain, in that it is undesirable and avoided wherever possible in all its facets. Alcohol is a drug that instantly anesthetizes pain, whether it be physical or emotional discomfort. Professionals in the field often refer to someone self-medicating with alcohol, which essentially is a form of pain relief. As we all experience different forms of pain throughout life, it's easy to understand why we use alcohol for comfort and to self-commiserate. Certainly in the Western world, there are great expectations to acquire material wealth and status, which I found didn't satisfy my internal, rather abstract void, best described as some sort of need for a spiritual connection. Alcohol definitely numbed that feeling, temporarily. These two areas alone were major influences on my drinking pattern. However, I believe there is even more pervasive a domination at work than is generally known, and hasn't registered, certainly in 1 in 4 of us who flaunt excess. As controversial as this may sound, in my experience, craving is the driving force behind it. The phenomenon of craving is the main thread of addiction. The problem being, none of us recognize its presence until it's too late and severe damage has occurred. In practice, or in practical terms, craving presents simply as an overwhelming, or if you prefer, pressing desire to have a drink. But really what's happening is the body and mind is seeking to feed a habit that has formed from what is a very addictive drug. You may ask, if this is true, why aren't we made aware of it? Well, denial is much associated with being hooked on alcohol. If you prefer, you can call it addicted, dependent, or alcoholic. Obviously, with the overriding image of alcohol as being a fun thing to do, who would want to label themselves different from the norm? But we shouldn't be too self-critical. After all, a significant proportion of the population are born with a genetic predisposition for craving, and that we can do very little about. I think it fair to say that our world of alcohol has created a very powerful and influential illusion, with most people still entranced by its spell. Bearing in mind that we are talking about a multi-billion-pound industry that isn't keen on us forging an opinion based on truth. Alcohol is metaphorically and literally on all our lips and in our faces everywhere. Nevertheless, over the past 17 years plus, I have proved that alcohol isn't necessary for me to be sociable, to enjoy myself, to numb pain or emotional discomfort, for sophistication or any other reason. As for it being enjoyable, well, perhaps it is, but the costs involved beyond the monetary factor are just too great for me. Therefore, on balance, I much prefer to partake of tea, coffee, sparkling water or fruit juice. These present no hidden dangers, and actually I enjoy them far more than I ever thought I did alcohol. Now the fog of ignorance has lifted, I can see that I no longer need or desire a temporary drug-induced fix to feel good or enjoy life. In conclusion, it's true that from my experience, I now find myself asking a very different question to why do people drink alcohol. Indeed, recovery from alcoholism has completely turned it on its head. To why would I be stupid enough to ever want to pick up another drink? Long may it continue. Alan Williams, recovered alcoholic.